again, why didn't you come up to me when this happened to you, Robert?
Alex, I tried to get to you. There were so many people around you that I could not get to you, and I wanted to tell you straight out what had just happened to me. And there was so
Did
many
the guy
people
scurry
around.
off after you told him you were going to stomp him?
Yeah, he did.
Well, see, the reason I believe this story is just the tone of your voice, the whole history of it. And I got Dr. Pieczenik here, so I won't get off into it. But I wanted to simply cover a FEMA drill. And I had an Army source saying that it was a drill to basically take over a key interstate highway route system. It was a martial law continuity of government drill. So I get to Brooksville. This is in my film Police State 2: The Takeover, year 2000. And I'm just friendly. And a guy who'd been out, we were building a memorial church for the Branch Davidians, who I thought was a cop and who acted real weird, was always trying to stir stuff up. Looked like a military type, really good shape, but looked like a special forces type. And was always trying to stir stuff up. This guy in the middle of nowhere shows up when we're there talking to locals. The locals, it's all on video, say, yeah, the Army's come to our door in Brooksville. It's on video in the film, and it's told us not to talk to you. So then I'm sitting there outside the local airfield at night trying to film it, and this guy steps out of the bushes and starts lighting things on fire. And I'm going, what are you doing? Putting it out. And he's going, come on, let's burn everything down. And I had to tell him and grab him. And I said, listen, I know you think you're tough, but I'm about to really hurt you bad. And then he scurried off and later found out he was with the Army. But, I mean, the U.S. Army, because I wanted to videotape him, was ready to burn down Brooksville and put me in prison for it. I mean, again, this country is so far gone, ladies and gentlemen. I cannot describe to you. And I know there's good people in the military as well. Like Anthony Schaefer exposing this as a fraud, and the head of the bin Laden unit coming out with the Iran situation saying it's a fraud, and all these countless people, and the head of the Bush administration's unit studying the Persians come out. She said it was a fraud, and you've got all these other people coming out, fraud. I'm going to get your number, Robert. I'm going to call you. You need to go to the Dallas Police Department. You need to get footage of this. And you need to tell, that guy when he calls you up, says he's going to come get you. Tell him good. Tell him you're locked and loaded and love it. Because, again, you give into their intimidation, they love it. Just decide you're dead already. Enjoy it. This is what living's all about. You notice I'm out there, no bodyguards. I don't care. You know what? I'm not living in fear. I don't care. I'm not a cowardly piece of trash like them. And that's the end of it. We're going to restore the Republic. We're going to abolish the Federal Reserve. It's over. It's on. Nothing can stop us. What did Thomas Jefferson said? What waters the tree of liberty? I'm Miracle Grow to this thing. I'm bigger Miracle Grow if they don't kill me, but I don't care. I'm not going to live as a coward. I'm all in, committed. That's the way it is. You can't stop it. All right, I know I'm ranting now. Dr. Steve Pieczenik, of course, wrote the Manual on Psychological Warfare for the State Department, ran CIA operations and other operations all over the world. And he's given us a lot of key information over the years. It's turned out to be very accurate. He called right when all this was breaking, before all the analysts had started to go public, or right as they were, to say the whole Iran thing was fake. It's basically admitted to be fake now. And I wanted to see about the green lighting and the rest of it. But what do you make of the last caller, Doc, just briefly, at the Federal Reserve rally with somebody saying, throw this canister and activate it with a cell phone? And the guy said no, and he threatened to physically assault him. What does that sound like to you?
Well, let me just tell you the personal experience where you have been, and you and your show has been very effective. I just went to the Miami rally this weekend, and they were very peaceful, and a lot of people were yelling, listen to Alex Jones, Infowars, turn into it. And so I just want to congratulate you and the rest of your crew for being very influential in the peaceful demonstrations. Now, of course, in every demonstration, you're going to expect some agent provocateur, or you're going to accept some infiltration. But most of the time, if this man has a problem, he feels there was a provocative agent, he should go to the Dallas police and find out. But for the most part, I think you, Alex, really should address yourself to the students all over the country and the world. They're quite frankly, they're listening to you. Even in Rome, they were tuning into you in Info when I was there before the demonstrations, not because you agitated them, but because you stood up for principles of freedom and against the principles of corruption that you and I stand for. And the one thing this administration and many administrations are afraid of, but particularly this one, David Axelrod came out again and in a very stupid, almost self-denigrating way, denigrates the president, reaffirms the fact that if you want to find how strong the president is, just ask Osama bin Laden. Now, that's so cynical and so idiotic. But this is what you would expect from someone who works in the White House, who's paid to be a liar, who's paid to be a spinner, and is telling the American public, you want to vote for somebody who's already proven to be a liar and a sociopath and ineffectual, but you've got to ask a dead man who's already been dead before he was shot. So my point is, there's a lot more to do in these demonstrations where you, Alex, are very influential in explaining to these young kids they have to pursue the issue of the corrupt banks. The banks are absolutely corrupt. Not one individual was really indicted for blank fine, not blank fine in Goldman Sachs, who's totally corrupt. The entire institution was corrupt. You have to just read the Federal Commission report, J.P. Morgan Chase, and Citibank. You've got a man, Rubin, who was the former Secretary of Treasury under Clinton, receives $120 million for being a counselor and monitoring the bank. And then he was asked, weren't you aware of the subprime fraud? He said, no, I wasn't involved in that. So the level of corruption and the wealth that's egregious while the poor Americans are working every day, taking 2 to 3 jobs, it's just not acceptable. And the discrepancy between those who are working, this is not a class warfare. This is really what democracy is about. And I'm proud of you, Alex, and that's why I join your show from time to time to say that very rarely do we hear that kind of statement from somebody like yourself and the show, as opposed to what we hear on the mainstream, which identifies these students as deadbeats or hippies or, malcreants or miscontents, which is not true to them. And these are people from all walks of life who really have seen and understood the discrepancies between what the government says and does, between a military that goes to war for reasons they don't even understand. And quite frankly, I work with our military. They've lost the war, not because they don't know what the war was about, but basically they implemented a war without an end, without a strategy, without any tactics. And counterinsurgency and counter does not mean anything in a world where you really can't identify the outcome or the end game, or you're dealing in a corrupt society like Karzai in Afghanistan. By the way, the only thing that did come out with the war in Afghanistan was increased crop of heroin and drugs. They did very well this year, thank you. The U.S. government exceeded their capabilities in instigating a huge crop of opium that was exceeded the year before. And in Iraq, we've totally destroyed a country, but we have a $1 billion embassy that's being protected by hundreds of millions of dollars worth of private mercenaries. So basically what we have here is we have a government that's non-functional, a legislature that is not only dysfunctional, but really not relevant to the workings of democracy anymore. When you can appoint 12 people to just take over from a legislature of 560 people, which really doesn't belong, it's arcane, then we really have to rewrite the Constitution, rewrite the way we do government, and we can no longer have just 2 parties. We do have to have a third party, and I see your influence is very important. Whether we agree on all matters or not, that's the process of democracy, and the protest is democracy. And any legislator who thinks that this is anti-democratic or an anarchistic movement is so wrong and will be losing his or her job eventually, that it's pathetic, because America is moving. And in thanks part to you, over these 10 years, people have been listening to what was called the so-called conspiracy unit, i.e. you and me and others. And the truth of the matter is, the real conspiracy is not committed by you or me. It's just we read out exactly what the government has done. And unfortunately, this government, the government before it, have been liars, deceitful, betrayed, and the American public is not stupid. I remember under Jimmy Carter, one of the truck drivers once said, what do they think we are, dumb rummies? We're not. We're very smart people. We know what we want. We want jobs, and we want the ability to just state what we want to state without being told what to do. But we don't want a king. or a queen in the form of Obama, or Bush Jr., or their wives or the retinues. We don't want to pay millions of dollars for Obama to run around and claim that he's doing job opportunities when in fact he's running for the presidency. And we don't want candidates who are not qualified for the presidency. And I'm really questioning whether we need a presidency or we just need a committee of governors that can run this United States of America with technicians, the way we have it in Singapore, and get rid of a lot of that bureaucracy. We don't need all the departments are there. We don't need 876,000 top secret candidates in the intelligence community. Believe me, the intelligence community is not that good. For the most part, you could get rid of probably 70 to 80% of them right now because of the effectiveness of social media and some of the outstanding candidates we have in cyber terrorism and cybersecurity. But we don't need all these new organizations. I don't think anybody knows what's going on. Certainly not the Director of National Intelligence estimates. I mean, that was absurd what happened. Now we have soldiers going to Chad in Central Africa. Did you know that, Alex?
Oh, yes. Well, listen, that's my questions for you. And again, we already have a shadow government. We already have the bureaucracy with the shadow governors and the puppet presidents in there, and an establishment that doesn't care about the future. They only care about raw power. But I specifically wanted to ask you, because, I mean, I had so many other guests on last week, they concurred that the green light was basically going on, but now it's going back off, at least partially, because that whole fracas blew up in Obama's face, the whole fake Iranian thing. But now they're saying, don't worry, they've got more fake plots. So I want to get into Uganda. I want to get into Chad. I want to get into Obama's little African safaris he's got going on. But first, what does this signify that they put out this fake report? It blew up in their face. And does that mean that the Iran attack is off?
Well, it means that number one, their attempt to try an Iran attack or even on Israel. What's interesting is when I mentioned to you that Shin Bet created Hamas, my intelligence reports showed me 4 days ago that Shin Bet went out of their way to talk to Hamas about release of prisoners. So you do have an effect. What it does mean is that despite everything we're saying here and despite the American protests, and by the way, I haven't heard any legislators come forth. Have you, Alex? I don't know if anybody in the audience has heard either Democrat or Republican or reprobate denounce what the president did or the administration did, because I think they're too cowardly. I think what we have are really a bunch of cowards. So number one, what you've seen is the underpinning problems of our Constitution, really our society. Number one, we have legislators who are pretty much crony capitalists. Two, they're very weak and ineffectual. Three, they really are ineffective. We don't need them. Four, you have a president who's ineffective. Number five, he doesn't really care what the public says. Six, you have an intelligence committee and a military that right now that's totally disconnected from the American public. I think the intelligence organization is growing out of control because there's no one to oversee them, and the committees that do oversee them are afraid of the military because they're distributed in such a way, as you know, in Texas and Alabama and Georgia, where they had control of contracts for the military-industrial complex. So, in effect, they hold many of the congressmen and senators hostage to the military-industrial complex, and then you have a lot of cronyism and professionalism in our military, where you have self-aggrandizing generals and colonels leaving the military and then joining the private sector. So now you have a total disconnect. We have an imperial America that's Pax Americana, but we don't have the Republic. And the Republic is falling apart, which is reminiscent to me and to your audience of the time of Rome, Spain, and France, where we had large armadas but very ineffectual force projection, and really not relevant to where we are right now. Now we have to concentrate on the fact that the presidency itself is a questionable office. I've got to be very frank. I'm tired of having to rationalize the miscreant behaviors of a Clinton or the ineffectual behaviors or the lies of a Bush Jr. or the total dysfunctional behavior of an Obama. And what that tells me is not that I'm right or wrong. It's just that this presidency in particular really doesn't work. It's anachronistic. What happens is you have cronyism all around there. You have an incredible amount of money that's spent on protecting someone who really is not relevant to our well-being on an everyday basis. What's the alternative? Now that we have social media, we can reconstruct the structure of our society according to the needs of what we have, and devolution of the federal power. That's where I do agree with the Ron Pauls and others to say we don't need these institutions. We don't need a military in Afghanistan. We don't need military in Iraq. And now we do not need a military in Africa because there's no reason to be in Uganda. It's as if the military is restless like a bunch of schoolboys, even our special forces, and they have to run around the world telling you about extreme violence. Well, that just doesn't happen. We have to call them back. We have to reduce the size of our military, reduce the size of our intelligence community.